Chris with RVA Returners back in the next episode in our series of what decks we would play if we were actually participating in the Crystal Cup in Tampa. But before I get into the deck, I actually just want to say how excited I am to be in the booth calling the shots. I think it's going to be a great event to spectate. I think there's going to be a lot of talented players. There's going to be a lot of really neat decks. So I'm just super jazzed to be a part of it, and I can't wait to see everybody down there. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the deck that I would play if I were actually participating in the event, and that is Mono Earth Final Fantasy 15. Alright, so taking a look at the deck, it's got a pretty classic breakdown. You're looking at 23 forwards, 10 summons, and 17 backups. Now looking at the forwards first, it's based around the new Final Fantasy 15 forwards, and of course you can see we're running full play sets of each Noctis, 3 of Gladiolus, and 3 of Ignis. Now the reason that's important is these guys are kind of the backbone of the deck. When they're all out together, they just really complement each other. Gladiolus being able to be played at a discount if you control Noctis, Ignis being able to search for a Noctis, and of course buffing both Gladiolus and Noctis and any other 15 forwards that could come along by 1,000 power, and giving them Brave, which is extremely powerful when you're looking at a big body like Gladiolus. Ideally with the deck, these guys are the ones you want to see. You want to play an early Noctis, the 2 CP, potentially get a card off the top for playing him. Now don't be reliant on this. You'll probably hit it about 20 to 25% of the time. If it hits, awesome. You've just played a free forward, and you could potentially play the Gladio in your hand on the same turn at the cost of really just 2 CP. Or, you whiff, and you just start building behind the Noctis. And either way is fine, because you're playing that Noctis on turn 1, because you're looking to apply some early pressure. And then if you have the Gladiolus in hand already, you're continuing to apply pressure, and it becomes something that your opponent has to answer, because you're looking at a 5k body and then a 2 CP 9k body as well. Now the rest of your forwards you're looking at are primarily there for utility purposes. Dadaluma's there for any sort of aggressive low to the ground matchup, things that like to deal damage and target, great against Mono Lightning. Wool is there to kind of get your guys over any sort of EX burst heavy deck, provide a little bit of a buff. And Cecil's there potentially to close out the game with Noctis. And Cecil's just a great EX burst in the later half of the game, and he's also just a big body. The other 2 utility forwards, as you can see, I got 1 copy of Undead Princess and 1 copy of Yuri. Both of these cards are searchable from Epitaph, who's in our backup line. It just provides a small little utility package here as well. Yuri, we're all very familiar with. He gives this deck a lot of things that they shouldn't be able to do, such as dulling and freezing, drawing extra cards, maybe additional ping. Just a real quality card to have, and you can play it, and he becomes kind of a lightning rod for removal, which kind of takes it away from possibly Ignis or Gladio, which you want to keep on the board. And Undead Princess is just great for closing out a game. The fact that you can bring her back into play really at instant speed just for breaking 2 backups, and chances are you're going to have backups that have kind of already done their job, and then they're just kind of sitting there. And the fact that you can catch your opponent not really being able to play the 3, and you can just swing over to win the game, just really works well there at the end. Now going down the line and looking at the summons, you see we have a lot of spot removal here. We're looking at 3 copies of Hecaton Chair, 2 copies of Yojimbo, and 3 copies of Titan. All of these are excellent pieces of removal, especially when you have a board full of big bodies. More times than not, you'll be using these with Gladiolus. He will be presenting pretty much an 11k beater for most of the time, and being able to potentially have the 2-for-1 with Titan, just being able to really kill most things with Hecaton Chair and Yojimbo, and the fact that Yojimbo and Titan are both bursts really create some awkward moments for your opponent. And then of course you've got Cockatrice to potentially close out the game, or to protect these forwards if you're looking to maybe use Hecaton Chair in a couple times a turn, or you can use those to protect Noctis when his fight triggers start to go off. All right, guys, and lastly, we're going to look at the backups. Every single backup in this deck serves some sort of function and is very important, from Shantoto all the way down to the Evoker. And we'll start with the Evoker. It's obviously great for ramp, and it serves a great purpose later in the game when you're looking to recur your Undead Princess. It's just a great target to break to allow her to come out and force your opponent into an awkward situation. Lyle's great because he catches a lot of removal that's relevant right now. Your Chaos Walkers, your Alexanders, your Hecaton chairs, your Yojimbos, your Bahamets. There's just so much that this card just stops, and having that thing up can just make your opponent's turns pretty awkward if they're especially if they're under pressure from the 15 guys. Inacross is great, especially in conjunction with Ingus. You know that's a 2k buff for all of your forwards, and that's really what you're looking for. Your guys are going to be big, they're going to be able to get over anything, and it's super relevant with Noctis, especially when he's fighting and taking out other forwards as you're taking damage. Epitaph is there to search out Undead Princess, get her into your break zone so you can start maximizing her value. Sometimes it's great to just search out the one of Yuri in the deck so you can start really just kind of sealing the deal. Kolka's a great early backup because you're looking primarily to search out an Ignis off of this, or maybe a Gladio if you already have the Noctis or the Ignis. Miner's obviously great. Miner has become a staple in Earth, and you're using that to recur your Lyles. You're using that to recur any backups that you've already broken to Undead Princess, or you're just kind of looping them together. You got a Miner to get back a Miner, and then you're breaking the Miner to get back a forward. We all know how this works. It's been the same way since Opus 5. Minfilia is great because you can recur a couple cards out of your break zone, and it's just a good way to destroy a lighter dark forward, especially your Yuris, your Gaudez's, things like that. Prompto is a fantastic new addition to Earth backups. Being able to one-shot Alua is really, really important because Alua can no longer drop down early and just be this constant source of pressure throughout the first few turns. Prompto can just one-shot her, and it's also a deterrent from your opponent going wide because once you get to that fourth forward, they're going to lose two. And it's also great if they see Shantoto go into a damage zone. They think that's the green light to go wide, but Prompto stops that very handily. And of course, Shantoto's there to really just reset the board state if you ever find yourself so far behind. And guys, that is Mono Earth Final Fantasy 15. I think it's a very safe pick in an unknown meta. You have answers to a lot of different things. You have monster removal. You have just good, clean removal. You have a very clean curve. You have big bodies. You're playing a very just efficient dudes and spells deck. So in an unknown meta, I think you could do a lot worse than playing something like this. So with that being said, let me know what you think. But, now friends, I wouldn't just take one deck with me to a major event. There's a reason we call it the Adam's Audible around these parts. So, with that being said, there's a good chance on the day of, I would just completely flip the script and play Fire Ice Final Fantasy VI. Alright, so looking at the breakdown of this deck, it's not the same old reliable we're used to. We're looking at 25 forwards, 8 summons, 17 backups, but our forwards are still focused around those great Final Fantasy VI forwards. The only familiar faces you'll probably see from earlier builds are Sabin and Locke. Locke, with the addition of this Edgar backup in this set, has really been knocked up a power level. Just the fact that he will be threatening 9k if you have Duke Larg out, and the fact that now you can go turn 1 Edgar, turn 2 Gestalin Empire Cid, search Locke, play Locke without having to worry about another forward to really utilize his enter the battlefield discard ability. Locke just becomes so much more consistent. And Sabin is still in the deck, but not as you remember him. Sabin is now here to fuel one of the new Final Fantasy VI forwards, and that's Duncan, who has essentially replaced the old heroic Furion from Opus 1 in the deck. But this guy kind of beats that card all across the board because he's going to do 4k to something that costs 4 or less when he comes in, which is a little bit more limited than Furion was. But the fact that now you're looking at just a piece of 2 CP removal by discarding himself or Sabin to put damage equal to his power, and then the fact that you can threaten with a Belias or the Edgar backup to do 9 or even 10k to something just for discarding a special is absolutely huge. One of the new additions, the Opus 8 Celeste. This card is just such a swingy tempo card because very similar to Locke, her ability is going to be activated off of those two backups. So being able to attack, move something out of the way, and then if she does damage, just being able to freeze something, and the fact that you can do that every turn. And much like Locke, the fact that she's a 3 CP 7K, with Duke, Larg, and Edgar at the ready, she's threatening 9K. So your opponent has to start making choices whether they want to just attempt to kill her. That way that, that removal is being taken away from your other forwards like Locke and Duncan, or they're going to lose a forward by blocking, or they're going to lose one for a turn because it's going to be dull and frozen. Another one of the great additions here is the new Fire Cloud. We're essentially looking at a Fire Cecil here, just being able to just burn something for 3K plus whatever damage. Again, later in the game, him and Kuja kind of become your closers, and the fact that you can remove 10 from the game to bring Cloud back could just be a blowout and can win you the game there at the end. Speaking of blowouts, you were looking at a single copy of Lease. Lease later in the game, just getting that 2,000 power buff to all of your forwards, including herself, is just so huge in getting over some of the bigger forwards in other decks, like Mono Earth, like Wind, like Water. But one of the biggest additions to the deck is the new 4 CP Laswell. Just the fact that he essentially operates as additional copies of Genesis, but is repeatable just for the cost of an additional fire that allows you to, you can put 1,000 damage onto something, and he can dull and freeze it damage forward when he comes into play and when he attacks. So this card is very, very powerful and can really just be exploited in conjunction with Celeste in those matchups where your opponent doesn't have a forward Aerith or a Minwu. So a lot of your forwards are doing things. You've got Genesis, who's still doing the same thing he's been doing since Opus 3. Sid Rain's really there to be in conjunction with Duncan, with Vivi, with Cloud, with a lot of your backups. So you're still getting a lot of those pingy, tempo-y plays that you've always been getting. Now looking at the summons real quick, just a real simple summon package. We've got 3 copies of Belias, 3 copies of Glacia, and 2 copies of 7 CP Phoenix. Belias is still kind of doing the same work he was doing before. Being able to, haste Locke, haste the Genesis early in the game to force that discard. It's even great in conjunction with Locke now, just because you play the Locke, you're more than likely going to get the discard just from the backups and Locke alone, and then you're being able to haste him out to force a second discard. Belias still also makes a great combat trick. The fact that it replaces himself and it offers first strike to a forward can just be absolutely huge. It's great in conjunction with Duncan if you're looking to get over forward, or it's just great that, if you have the special at ready, if they try to do something like Al Cid, or if they try to damage it or dull it, you can just Belias it and then use the special, and that's putting 9K onto something. So it's still a very tricky card, and it's gotten even more trickier with the additions of a lot of these new forwards. We also got 3 copies of Glacia. Still a great resource denial summon, the fact that you can still nuke something for 7K that's dull, which is still a relevant damage threshold. The discard is huge, and the dull and freeze, you just get through and push through that last few points of damage is huge. 2 copies of Phoenix. Phoenix, you have a lot of great targets in this deck, from Sid Rains, Celes, Locke, Lease is a great target later in the game, and Vivi as well for the 2-for-1. Phoenix is just, I think if you're playing fire cards and you have 3 CPs or lower in the deck, you need to be running this card. And we're looking at 2 copies, because it is expensive. And chances are when you use it, you're probably going to be winning the game shortly after. All right, and lastly, we're going to take a look at the backups. The 3 most important backups in this lineup are Edgar, Gestalin Empire Sid, and Setzer. Setzer is a firm replacement for the old Opus 4 forward. The fact that it's an EX burst, the fact that you can play it on turn 1 as long as you have a Final Fantasy VI forward and an ice card to pitch, you're essentially paying it for 2, and it's great late game if you hit it on a burst to recycle, Mirage Dives, Phantom Rushes, Sabin Special, getting Celeste back if she was killed at some point during the game. Edgar is there, just being able to give any of your 6 forwards plus 1,000 is just super, super relevant in this deck, because it makes Duncan's special better. Making Locke and Celeste 9Ks are just really, really powerful and really hard to get over. And the fact that once you do that, you can threaten Belias to be a 10K with first strike, which is a really, really good place to be. Black Waltz and Irvine still provide really solid, clean removal that combos well with a lot of your forward ping. The ping from Laswell from Sid Reigns, from Duncan, from Cloud, from Vivi, you name it. It works very well with those two backups. Jill Nabat is there to stop cards like Fasoya and I'll handle him because those cards, once those cards start killing your forwards, you're kind of going to be in a bad spot. And great in conjunction with that is the new Ice backup Casitas. The fact that her name isn't Jill Nabat but does pretty much the same thing as long as you control 4 Ice characters means you don't have to worry about making the decision. You can run the Jill that protects you from backup damage in conjunction with Casitas and just really puts you in a good spot. Black Mage is great, very similar to the Scholar for Mono Earth. Getting back a Belias or a Phoenix, just being able to recycle those when you need them and get one back, you can be very, very tricky with it and could also just force that blowout play. Yatsuyu is another hard replacement. I think it's just better than Red Mage at every point in the game. It costs 1 less, allows you to keep some mana open for different abilities, and sometimes it's just going to win you the game on the spot. Duke Larg, still a fantastic backup. The fact that you're looking for Locke, Celeste, and Genesis to be base 8Ks has never been bad, and it's going to continue to be good. Making Kuja a 10K, making Laswell a 9K are both excellent places for them to be as well. And that is Fire Ice Final Fantasy VI. And like I said, I would be 100% fine taking either one of these decks and playing them at the Tampa Crystal Cup. It would just really depend on how I felt the morning of the event and when I woke up and how testing went the night before. So either way, I'd be very comfortable and be very confident in my chances of doing well in the event. So with that being said, I always appreciate you guys listening and taking a look at our videos. And feel free to sound off in the comments below if you're not able to make it to Tampa and you had a deck in mind. What deck would you play? Tell us our reasons why. Tell us what you think about our deck selections, not just mine, but both Adam's. We always appreciate you watching, and we will see you in Tampa.